Hyrule Warriors is a series that began as a spin-off series in 2014 with the release of the original Hyrule Warriors for the Wii U, and has since been getting ports and a final definitive edition. The series got a revival just this year with the release of Hyrule Warriors, Age of Calamity. This game truly is the best Hyrule Warriors game ever made to date, and it takes what was supposed to be a spin-off idea into the mainline lore of the Zelda franchise. My name is the Hyrule Historian, and today we are going to be looking at Hyrule Warriors, Age of Calamity, how it affects the Zelda lore and timeline, and what it means for future Zelda games. Age of Calamity takes a hack-and-slash formula and incorporates it into an absolute masterpiece and art of a game. It takes the Breath of the Wild art style and some gameplay mechanics and turns it into the perfect Hyrule Warriors game. The game is so satisfying not just to look at but also to play and explore all the lore details it leaves behind. And that's what we're going to be looking at in this game. The story? Leading up to the release of this game, we thought this was going to be a mere prequel of Breath of the Wild, showing us what happened in the Great Calamity leading up to our hero's defeat. The game begins as our odd hero, an egg-shaped guardian named Terrako, travels back in time at the moment that Zelda activates her powers to save Link. Now, we are going to be discussing some pretty confusing timeline topics, so bear with me. I want you to think of this as something like the time Zelda sent Link back in time at the end of Ocarina of Time. Let me summarize it quickly. In Ocarina of Time, the timeline split into three. A timeline where the hero is defeated on the final battle against Ganon, a timeline where the hero is successful and is returned to the past to live his life, and the third timeline which continues the story of the future, where the final battle took place and Zelda sent back Link. These three timelines are parallel, each one continuing, no matter what happens in the other timelines. In Age of Calamity, when Terrako goes back in time, he splits the timeline into two. The first one is the timeline in which he originated, the one where everything we know from Breath of the Wild takes place. Nothing changes here and everything goes just as we play and know from Breath of the Wild. The hero is defeated, is put in the Resurrection Shrine for 100 years, the champions are dead, so on and so forth. So that's the basic stuff. The future timeline where the calamity happened, everything stays the same. But in the past, where Terrako traveled back to, everything takes a huge turn. First, let's solve the big mystery. Where does the evil Terrako come from? Well, if we see the opening cutscene, the evil guardian sent malice from the future into the past. The malice from the future is knowledgeable and knows the good Terrako's intentions. The malice from the future takes control of the Terrako from the past. Let me explain. Terrako was kept in Zelda's study, in a box. In the future he is activated because of Zelda's power and he goes back in time. The malice that traveled from the future affected the Terrako from the past, that was in Zelda's study. What I'm saying is that the Terrako from the future activated by Zelda's power is the good one. And the Terrako from the past that is affected by the malice from the future, is the bad one. How do I know all of this? Well, the game's description for Harbinger Ganon gives us this piece of information. The deactivated Terrako was activated and brought to life with all the knowledge it had from the future. Time travel should not be taken lightly, and especially not in Zelda games. It's so complicated and can be very confusing. Let's continue. So, why is this a big deal? You might be asking, and let me just say it is a huge deal. Terrako goes back in time and prevents the calamity from happening the way it did. It did happen anyway, but much earlier, and events that happened in the calamity from the future didn't happen at all. The way these characters meet in the past is way different. Zelda was the one who met each individual champion by herself in the future, but in the past she already knew Link and he was her personal knight at the time. So what does this mean for the timeline? Just take a look at this. This is how the Zelda timeline is at the moment. But the question is, how does this come to be? How do the three original timelines merge into one? Does it have to do with a multiverse theory like the game theorists point out? Or is it something else entirely? We don't know yet. We just know that this new timeline created has had some far distinct occurrences. The Blights were so much stronger as their original counterparts, and that's because there's actually two Calamity Ganons merged into one, making themselves far stronger and superior than before. Right before the champions died, the four successors to the champions arrived from the future and prevented the falling of the divine beasts and the defeat of the champions. The timeline changed a lot of things. Two different timelines interacting with each other as they did in this game, with the four successors being fully aware that they were defeated in the past and they could go to the past to stop that from happening. I believe that time travel in here is going to be way more different than shown in movies. Things changed in the past will not change the future. Breath of the Wild did still happen. They just created a separate timeline where it didn't happen and many things were different. The champions are alive. The Yiga clan turned on Asta because they didn't want to be sacrifices. This game is basically a reimagining of what it would have been if the heroes had won the Great Calamity 100 years prior to the events of Breath of the Wild. This game creates a whole different timeline, and it's very interesting to think on how the series will expand on this separate timeline. It might or might not be referenced on Breath of the Wild 2, because the future champions have the memories of going to the past. But it wouldn't be ideal for the game's lore for the two timelines being mentioned or intertwining like they did in Hyrule Warriors. It would mess everything up. Age of Calamity makes perfect the idea of a what-if universe, and it really shows how much effort went into the game. I'm very excited to see where the series is headed from a fan and lore standpoint. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to leave a like if you did enjoy it, or a dislike if you didn't. Don't forget to comment, subscribe and share the video. It helps out a ton. I'll try to respond as many comments as I can. Stay tuned because next time I will be talking about what I would love to see in the Breath of the Wild sequel, and after that on a future video, on the tragic story of the forgotten hero of time. So, until then, I'll see you all next time.